Hey, welcome back to another episode of Psilocybin Says.
You bunch of sinners.
Ooh, is it time for confession already?
Do you accept the mushroom as your Lord and Savior?
If you say I should.
Burn in hell otherwise.
Oh, gosh. Oh, I thought the mushroom was cool.
Actually Eric Osborne and
Courtney Rose.
we are not crazy, dogmatic, psychedelic, spiritual gurus. We are regular old people who started a psychedelic church like regular people do.
Isn't that what cult leaders? That sounds like something a cult leader would say. I'm just saying. I'm open to, if that's what I am and I find that out, then I will be open to hearing that. And
you can't leave a cult. You can't leave. You can't leave a cult. It's like they won't let you leave. You can leave Sanctuary any fucking time you want to. I don't give a shit. There's been people that have left. There's been people that we've asked to leave. There's been people that we've asked to stay. There's been whatever. It is a community of faith centered around mushrooms that have been historically regarded as sacred for millennia. And that's what we're talking about in this episode today is the outfall of religious trauma. Oh, man. I mean, I'm coming out of the Catholic Church for years and years and years, still processing a lot of trauma. We know that a lot of people see Sanctuary, they're curious about it, and they think, church, hard no. We just want people to understand that it's not your grandpa's church.
Oh, gosh, no. We even talk about our grandparents here.
I didn't mention in the episode that my grandmother, like, months before she died, she told me, Eric, you'll always be Catholic. That's a fucking cult.
Yeah, sure, Grandma, because I'm pretty sure I'm not right now.
I love you, Grandma, but no.
Yeah, so this is a really important conversation to have where we're at as a society and our spirituality and where we're at just being ultra sensitive to bullshit and craving authenticity.
Yes.
Like we're pretty much all of us are, like, even if we won't admit it. So yeah, we dive into that in this episode, kind of touch on Sanctuary's minister programs, because that's kind of what had us talk about this whole topic of what is a minister and like the perceptions around church terminology and how are we reframing that, redefining it, reclaiming those terms. So sure hope you enjoy the episode. If you're not watching on YouTube, please know there's a video of us out there talking about this. So you can go to YouTube. That's Psilocybin Says, and check out the podcast there. Make sure to like the video if you like it. It sure does help us, helps people find the video if you like it. Subscribe if you really like us. And that way you'll be notified when we put new videos out. Leave us a review and let us know there what you think.
For God's sake, you will be granted access to the eternal pearly gates of mushroom heaven if you will but leave us a 5-star review with commentary.
That's right. At least in the Psilocybin Says reality.
Yeah.
The pearly gates await you. So hope you enjoy. So when I meet a minister on the street, like, just imagine Courtney's walking down the street and I'm like, I bump into somebody and I'm like, oh, hey, what's your name? What do you do? And they're like, I'm Billy Bob.
Oh, we're still with Billy Bob, eh? Billy Bob's still with us. All right.
And I'm a minister. I feel like my first reaction would be to figure out how to get away as quickly as possible. Like, great. Now, the next thing you're going to tell me is that I'm not living right and I need to change my ways, my sinning ways. And I just don't want to have a conversation like that.
It's kind of like catcalling, like catcalling has never worked. It's never worked. And yet guys still do it. And judging and condemning someone has never been a way to win them over. And yet it's still so frequently practiced.
I suppose judging them, condemning them, and threatening them with death has kind of worked.
Yeah. Well, damnation, worse than death. It's after you die, it's still gonna suck.
Right. Yeah. Both of those things. But I mean, like during the, Crusades, like that was
that
actually murder was like, you're gonna practice the religion we practice and do what we say, or like we're gonna kill you.
Look, it is totally understandable why the vast majority of modern America has GTFO'd the church. I mean, it's like you look back at historically what religions have done, and it's appalling that it's even spoken of in the same context as a spiritual organization, that we can justify slaughtering millions of people in the name of, quote, God.
Is that something that the Catholic Church, like as of today, has like acknowledged? Like, have they made any statements around that bloody past of theirs? Or
yeah, I'm sure they said sorry somewhere along the line.
Oh yeah, sorry. Like we'll try.
That should have happened 500 years ago. Sorry about that.
Yeah, we
your
probably
children
won't do that again.
Are still not safe.
Yeah.
But at least we're not killing entire populations. No, it's atrocious. But it's not just the Catholic Church. It's across the board. I think ultimately it comes down to the abuse of power, right? And religious, spiritual authorities, air quotes, authorities, have claimed this proprietorship over someone's eternal self. It's a fucking lie. There is no way, point blank period, amen, that any single organization or leader has any authority over my eternal self. And it is absolutely baffling to me that en masse we have bought into that.
It is baffling. It's baffling. It's interesting that we can lose that awareness, that consciousness so quickly. Like, I mean, we come into this world and we're just kind of believing whatever we're told and whatever's going on around us. We're just kind of absorbing it and doing it. And at the same time, like, we are sovereign beings. Like, we're oftentimes not aware of that we are like inherently like free beings.
No, I think most of the time we're not aware of that.
Right. Which is what it seems to come down to. Like, if you're going to believe that this God, this being is like controlling you and has the ability to damn you forever, you're clearly not remembering that.
No, I don't think the
possible.
same goes for allegiance to a particular political affiliation, or I don't know, any type of group that is able to put a dogma down that says if you go against these rules, then you're no longer one of us, which is a basic inherent human need, is to be part of a group. And so social ostracization is one of the most readily available high-performing tactics to prevent individuals from behaving independently.
I remember being in the mushroom space for like one of the first handfuls of times and feeling that social, that terror that because of showing who I am, I'm going to be ostracized, like that the people that I'm with are no longer going to want me if I'm truly me. And
You mean the people in the mushroom?
The people in the mushroom space with me. Mm-hmm. And like, that's the worst. I think that is like the worst feeling that comes up for me in the mushroom space when it does come up is that I cannot be me for some reason. Like, it's that paradigm just blasting in my face. And there's nothing probably more gratifying than getting, like, realizing that's a hoax, like that's a lie, something that I believe that's not true.
Well, and if someone is incapable of accepting you as you are, that's really a reflection of their own judgment on themselves more than it is on you, which I think is a valuable perspective to take into this. But it's still something that comes up for me plenty of times, particularly when I'm like facilitating for other people, Now, there's also in that role, getting weird gives permission to others to get weird as well. So, I kind of play with that. But many times when I have taken mushrooms with people and I'm not necessarily there to be a support, I'm just part of the group, that comes up for me as well. Am I going to get too weird? I'll get weird quick.
Right. So. Which I'm grateful for.
Well, and maybe it's a benefit that I bring just to the founding of this organization. We've talked a lot about how do we prevent Psanctuary from becoming dogmatic? How do we prevent Psanctuary from becoming a cult of personality, and thinking even in terms of after we're gone, in the desire to have an organization that can outlive us.
Yeah. I mean, getting weird is such a vague term, because there's weirdness that's like not only uncomfortable but like inappropriate, and then there's like weirdness that is welcoming.
But that's a slippery slope, because when I'm working with people and someone like God, one of the weirdest things I ever witnessed was a 75-year-old man that attempted to suck his own cock for 45 minutes.
Right.
And like, he was like completely naked.
That's a good point.
And trying to give himself a blowjob.
It is.
And talking about his addiction to porn at the same time. Mm-hmm. It was and I felt like it was a great honor to be there and to not be uncomfortable and to allow it to just be what it was, to just be there as a support in case he, went too far, which there were multiple times that I had to prevent him from, harming himself accidentally by like rolling on cactuses and shit like that. But
sure. But I was really, and I'm glad you are clarifying that. It's like a really good topic to talk about, is just that whole thing of like inappropriateness, quote unquote, and weirdness in the mushroom space. I was really referring to, though, as a leader, like a space holder, getting weird, the spectrum of that
for sure
is very different than for somebody you're holding space for that's like deep in it in the mushroom space. So just to clarify that,
no, I definitely restrain myself, but like hugging trees or I don't know, there's several, like I could think of specifics that I have done knowing that it was going to be perceived as a little weird, but also that it was going to give people permission to go beyond that boundary.
Bodying the spirit of a bird.
Yeah, I've done some.
That's a common one for you, I would say.
I forgot. Yep, I've been a bird.
You've often been a bird. I have many memories of you.
I've done a lot of purging. I've done a lot of purging in front of people so that they know that it's okay. Mm-hmm.
So, all right. So back to meeting a minister on the street. Mm-hmm. What if you were walking down the street, or let's say in like a coffee shop, and
more likely to have a conversation.
Yeah, true. In a coffee shop, and you meet somebody and they're like, "Oh yeah, hey, I'm a mushroom minister, or I'm a psychedelic minister."
Oh,
then what?
Honest to God, I would have my own reservations. I would be like, oh yeah, you are you now?
Yeah. I guess you personally being so deep in the psychedelic space, that's understandable.
I don't think it's that much different for me than it would be for anybody else. I think that we all have inherent stigmas in us. The concern or question of whether or not it is culty would come up for me immediately, will be without a doubt. Honest to God, the vast majority of people who I've met that have been self-proclaimed shamans or healers or all that are, not exactly what I would consider the epitome of a stable, grounded person. So I would have some questions there. It would be very dependent on how the individual holistically presented themselves, So I want to say that I would be open-minded, but I think I would be to an extent, as I am to the extent that I am with pretty much everybody. I'm an inherent skeptic. I am from go. I'm just pretty skeptical. I take people at face value, but I am usually skeptical about. Just to say it, like I'm usually skeptical about people's depth of experience, especially in something like psychedelics or kind of otherworldly, metaphysical, stuff. Because the majority of people, I feel like, who proclaim themselves to be a thing have just dipped their toe in and have kind of taken on this identity. So I'm acknowledging I would be very skeptical, and I would probably stereotype the person. Hopefully I would quickly check myself, and if they were, able to maintain a coherent conversation and they felt authentic and I didn't get the EBGBs or whatever, then I think I would probably begin to be more curious. The same, though, really and I'll just finish up this here, applies if someone tells me that they're a minister, like just a Christian minister. I'm usually like, my initial response is, oh, you're a judgmental, whatever.
Right.
But then if I talk to them and I can feel that they are actually like very caring and sincere, and not trying to tell me how to live my life from go, then I'm gonna think differently about it.
Yeah, this is such a great topic of conversation, because like before this episode, when we were talking, before we started recording, we were talking about what we were going to talk about, and touching on the topic of dogma and how, like I was referencing, for me, that's been something that's been a major turnoff in getting involved with faith organizations. And as I was talking through it, I was saying like, well, it's hard for me to see Psanctuary as really ever going there and being dogmatic just because of how we're starting. However, just this short conversation, I'm realizing like I have a lot of judgments towards groups of people. Like, yes, the minister thing, like Christian ministers, that's like pretty triggering for me. I know for a lot of other people, like how many of us have seen the dude on the soapbox just like going at it on college campus or wherever the hell they are. And however, through Psanctuary, meeting ministers from Christian backgrounds who are cool as can be and really open-minded and interested in approaching things differently and getting a different perspective on the bigger picture has been really cool and surprising to me. And that's something I want to be more open-minded about, is like actively welcoming those people in. Cause like I got the same thing with doctors. Like I meet a doctor and I'm like, ugh, like, what are you going to tell me to do that I don't want to do or I don't agree with? Cause that's happened so much in my life, but not each one of us is created equal.
And that's where psychedelics are in such an interesting space, because on the, the clinical side, there is that same maybe even more potential for dogma. And on the religious side, that exists as well.
Mm-hmm.
But psychedelics fit, particularly psilocybin, I believe, fits so neatly right in the middle that it provides an opportunity for both disciplines to come together and come together with a different approach. There will be both psychedelic religions and clinical practices that have a our way or the highway approach. As this matures, because of my own maturity and growth in psilocybin space, I believe that it's eventually the majority will move towards the center. Because if you are practicing with the mushroom, then you will learn relatively quickly that you ain't got it all figured out.
Yeah.
My question there is, or my suspicion, however, I should say, is that the religious organizations, that the administrators of those organizations will be much more likely to actually participate in, consumption of the sacrament. Whereas the majority, I feel like it's likely that the majority of clinicians will not actually take the substance themselves. And so we may see a little more rapid evolution in psychedelic religious practice than we do in clinical practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Coming from the model of the models are inherently so different, traditionally with mushroom practice, the person administering is oftentimes consuming, communing as well to be on that same energetic space. But therapists or clinicians, not therapists, but psychiatrists and people that prescribe medication are usually not taking it along with their client or patient.
Which I think that is another reason that the masses themselves will also gravitate towards the religious use model, because you want to know that you're working with someone who knows what they're working with.
Totally.
And you're going to see that much more prevalently in the spiritual communities. And there's also just the reality that the research has already shown, thank you, Roland Griffiths, that particularly psilocybin is inherently a mystical experience. That was in 2006. That was the first study done that psilocybin can reliably induce a classic mystical experience. It is a sacrament by nature of its function, so I think that once we get over this hurdle of, the religious baggage, that we're going to see a pretty drastic shift towards religious use.
So we've gotten this question often in the group discovery calls, which is part of the membership process with Psanctuary, opportunity for people to ask all their questions, or as many as they can fit in an hour. This question of why on earth are you all using these classic stigmatized religious terms like cleric, minister, church, because people say, I was definitely rubbed a little wrong when I saw that, because I have that trauma with a religion. And oftentimes it's Catholicism and Christianity of different sorts. But so could you talk a little bit about that? Our choosing of the term minister when it comes to our new programs and
just
the way we've done things,
communicate everything that we are. Yeah, I think there's kind of two sides to that coin. One is the obvious, this is the legally accepted language of a religious organization. And while we don't believe that to be a recognized faith practice or spiritual practice that there has to be a certain language used, we recognize that we function within a society that does require that. But that doesn't mean that it's just a workaround either. Because what I have found as someone who was very turned off by the word church, very turned off by the word God. Oh, like, man, I used to cringe when I heard the word God. And now, like, I was having a conversation with a therapist yesterday who's a kind of a religiously trained therapist. And when he said God, I found myself thinking, like, yeah, feeling like good inside. And it has been really rewarding and powerful to reclaim that language that when I was a child was so powerful and so meaningful to me. I had a deep love for God as a kid. I understood that as a love for nature and a love for community, and now I understand it as a love for existence, for consciousness, for exploration. But it's really wonderful. And honestly, it's the language that we have in the West that most closely fits within my experience. I mean, there's like multiple mushroom experiences where, it felt like God was talking to me, So I find it valuable in terms of like the things like minister and cleric and all that kind of stuff. Minister was a little more challenging for me until someone one day said, you or someone was talking about their grandpa being a minister and how they used to be as a kid. They were, maybe it was Athena, talking about how they were like always felt proud to when they told people that their grandpa was a minister. And I thought to myself, ooh, my grandkids will be able to say that their granddad was a psychedelic minister. I fucking dig it. I'll take that.
One of the first ones.
Yeah.
Using that terminology.
Yeah. And really, as I've been meeting and working with other retired ministers or former ministers and reflecting on the work that I've done, not just in Jamaica, but back when I was working in the restaurants and I was, spreading the good news of the mushroom and trying to just gently help people come towards this thing and trying to provide encouragement and just be a caring ear, then I have come to understand that really I've always been, ministering to my community. You're distracted on your phone there.
I was looking at the term minister. Just curious about what Webster says about that.
I've looked this up multiple times. You can read it if you want to.
So one who is authorized to perform religious functions in this says Christian church, especially a Protestant church. But there's also terms like prime minister.
Yeah.
That's a part of administering.
Yeah, exactly.
Sacrament.
That's what I ultimately bring it down to, is administering the sacrament. And then, when I think of ministering to the populace, it's really trying to just be a word of encouragement to remind people that we are much more than just our bodies.
Yeah, for me, with our new minister ordination programs, which are each designed to perform different functions. I'm seeing the term minister as more of an empowering title, like one that's like, I see a minister in these capacities as being someone who's like spreading, like helping empower others, like instead of trying to put others in a box, which is how I've previously experienced the term minister. And in this light, under this umbrella, I'm seeing it as more of like a kind of like a coach, but has a coach that is legit, that has experience, enough experience to perform that specific level of function for that minister. So yeah, it's interesting. Like it's, the whole experience of reclaiming these terms has been a really interesting experience for me personally, not being somebody who's participated really in church my whole life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, what hit me in this whole reclamation process was that in me being the minister of Sanctuary, we were in many ways inadvertently perpetuating the same perspective that has been associated with typical ministry. You have to come to me to get access to this sacrament. And that's the antithesis of what I want to bring into this movement, period, amen. Disclaimer, there will always be people who need a therapist or a clinician for this work. There are individuals who need real care and attention during the process, after the process, before the process. And that's really important to note. Not just saying that, across the board, everybody should just be taking mushrooms on their own. But the vast majority of people out there, especially with a little bit of education, a little bit of harm reduction, can slowly move into their own personal experiences, graduating the dose as time goes on, and keep it very safe and be their own minister. Again, that's the problem. I feel like one of the big problems with traditional church is that you've got to go to the guy to be your access point.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I don't want any part of that. And so I have a lot of confidence, at least while we're here and managing the show as Sanctuary, that it will not become a stagnant, dogmatic organization. We've already seen so many areas where we can improve, and we have made those improvements, where we can open up access and give people their own authority. Mm-hmm. That's what this is really all about.
Yeah, and to clarify for us and people listening, like the intention all along has been to not only keep people safe in the way that we have previously done things, not only here with Sanctuary, but in Jamaica. The whole idea was to provide a space that's safe and supported for anybody who wanted to have that sacrament experience with the mushrooms. And so this new evolution of Sanctuary, I think, is like founded in, for me, I feel like a personal liberation, like a personal understanding that I trust myself more now than I ever have. Mm-hmm. And trusting that with support, like with assisting and providing that support for people, being a leader in that way, and like, let's form more support, more access, and like set people free to trust themselves, because there's that sweet spot of like, when we trust ourselves and trust the process, and others do as well that are close to us, then there is less risk. There's less chance of things going awry, because there's that energy of trust and trust in the process.
For sure.
So yeah, that's a pretty big shift.
I mean, even in Jamaica, though, I used to say to people, like, I don't want you feeling like you're dependent on me. You come here. When people came to me to work with mushrooms in Jamaica, I would always say, like, my goal is for you to gain comfort with the medicine so that you go home and continue working. We do not need more codependency. If you want to come back and engage in our community, and you want to spend money here in our community and support this, on that level, amen. Thank you. It is welcomed. I love having people that continue to come back into the physical community and help build it at that level. But it's always been for me about, because that's how I started. I didn't have anybody teaching me, and I would have benefited from that, and I want to be able to share my knowledge, but I still would never want to be beholden to someone else and have to practice and do all the things that they do and all the way that usually, tends to go.
Right. And it's just not realistic. Like, I mean, for us at this point as an organization, like our members are in 40 plus states. Like, there's no feasible way that even if everybody wanted to always have another minister and cleric or other people, other members present with them, it's just not the way it is right now. So even just like that point alone, that we were realizing that so many people were like kind of feeling like they were jumping off a cliff, like, like I'm to the point of like, I'm not waiting any longer and I cannot realistically get to Kentucky. And so I'm going to eat mushrooms tonight and I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I wish there was like more of a process and a setup for me. And so it feels really good to be able to take people through that and allow people to like work out all of the fears and all of the questions and stuff for a duration of time before they actually eat mushrooms. Have that
look,
big dose.
Look, the psychedelic experience is one of the most personal, private, sacred, unspeakable experiences that anyone can have. Nobody else can tell you what that's about. Nobody else should be trying to tell you how to do it. To let it be on its own. And the fact is, the vast majority of people do not need any intervention during the experience itself. It's afterwards that community and that support is really crucial. So there's a narrative that's being formed around psychedelics right now that I think in many ways is still trying to perform that gatekeeper function. You have to come to me. You have to pay these fees. This is how it works. And that is not how it has to work. I don't even believe that's how it's supposed to work. We're already seeing it. And the more we have these community supported models where it's equal people on equal, level ground coming together, having their experiences and showing up for each other when it's needed, but ultimately everybody having their own very private. It's like that LSD trip I did recently. like there was no way that I could tell the individual who I was with what I was experiencing. Nothing. It was solely personally for me. So that's the empowerment that I want to bring into this is individual opportunity to explore their relationship with the mystery without someone telling them what it is.
Yeah, it's like you're saying, so vastly different for each person and each communion with the mushroom. Each time we partake in that, it's like, what? That was different than before.
Didn't see that coming.
Or sometimes it's similar. It's pretty similar, but if I had something like this, if I had a program like this, this type of program that we were putting out there to our members, a minister program with a group of people that was eager to experience consciousness in like a whole new way with each other in an intentional way. If I would have had that 12 years ago for the accessible rate that we're offering now, like I can't imagine I would pass that up. Honestly, like paying for the certifications that I paid for and let's not even talk about my college degree, how much that cost me. But it just feels kind of like a no-brainer for me personally, because I was craving so hard. I felt so alone. Like I had people that I knew that were messing around with psychedelics, but it was in more of a spirit of like, let's party and like experience an altered state and move on with our lives and not talk about it. Which, whatever, that's fine if that's what you're going through. But I really wanted an intentional, like, let's dig in. I want people to hold me accountable. I want to do that for other people. I want to hold space. I want to like figure out how to do that. And nobody I knew, except for until I met you, was doing that. And then how many years was it till I met somebody that was even interested in doing that as well? So to think of getting together with like 50 to 100 other people, oh my gosh, it sounds so dreamy. Like,
yeah, no, that is a certain goal, to see us having 50 to 100 or more people coming together and dosing in mass, you know, at a manageable level.
Not even just dosing. When I'm talking about like just hopping on like having a weekly, like just putting myself back in that place that I was in as a 22-year-old woman who like was ready to explore and felt like what I wanted to explore, I was the only one who, like, everybody I talked with about it was like, ooh,
well, and
okay.
we still hear that in our community.
And it's still, that's still where we're at. I mean, it's different. We're in a much more accepting place to even mention psychedelics now versus just 10 years ago. But like putting myself back to when I decided to get a wellness coaching certification, that was the closest I could come to at that time that I could find to a group of open-minded people who were curious, deeply curious, authentically about other people and their experience without some type of like prescription or back of the mind, like I'm going to tell you what to do as soon as you finish talking type of way. Like I wanted to learn how to hold space for people and myself without telling them what to do. I knew that 12 years ago.
Well, you know what's going to be funny that we're going to see, I'm sure of it, is we're going to see so many people spending $10,000 to train to be a facilitator, and they're going to find out that it is not for them. You know, we saw that a lot in Jamaica, therapists who went through CIIS and other programs, IPI and stuff, and they came down and they'd be like, you know, this is way harder than I thought. This is not what I thought it was. And so I think it's really wonderful that we're kind of offering a softer approach so people can, you know, invest minimally, get in there and find out, is this even what I want to be doing for other people, or to what extent do I want to do this for other people? Because it's going to, not only is there going to be a bottleneck of tons of people who are getting certified as facilitators, and there's, you know, not giving enough treatment centers for them to operate in, but they're going to find out that it is very different than how it's taught in the classroom, you know?
Right. It's, man, it's such a fascinating landscape right now. It's like, if you think about, because that's a similar model, the like, going through a $10,000 to $15,000 training program to figure out if you like something as university, as like the paradigm that we're waking up to that's like not serving us anymore.
We're applying old models to the psychedelic. I know.
It's like my generation is definitely telling their kids like, probably good that you don't go to college. Right. That's probably a really wise choice right now. It's a whole different, like, this is a whole different paradigm that we're entering into. And so there's that aspect of it. And then there's the fact that it's been illegal, like this specific thing that we're teaching institutions or teaching professionals to do right now. These professionals can't get the experience in that profession. It's unlike even say going to school to be a doctor, because most of us have we've been seen and treated by doctors our whole life. So we at least have that experience of being on the other side of it. Or like a nutritionist or a personal trainer or whatever it is. It's like, usually if we're choosing to go that route, we've at least experienced that route enough times to be interested in investing like $30,000 plus all this energy into it. But now it's like many people are like, I don't know, like it's been illegal. So I can't legally participate to even know if the experience is for me. And so the additional protection that like this route offers people to at least get the firsthand experience like themselves.
Yeah. I wonder if, CIIS or any of the programs in Oregon have a protocol for when old men try to give themselves blowjobs.
I would say if anybody listening who's at CIS does not have that protocol.
Here's what to do when...
Come to think of it, that's not technically in our operations guidelines right now, but there's too many weird things that have happened and will happen to put every single one.
We train to trust the process unless there is physical harm, threatened. So I continue to trust that process and allow for that. My mind wants to go through a list of all the weird shit that I've seen that would probably not be taught in any of these classes.
If you're interested in that, go ahead and sign up for the minister program where Eric provides anecdotal stories of many sorts.
I will be telling lots of stories of weird stuff.
Without mentioning any names.
Of course not.
Of course.
But, and that's beautiful healing. That individual, I laugh about it, but he had powerful healing. And I know that we've talked about this already, the porn addiction and whatnot, it is prevalent in our society. And to my understanding, I spoke with him up to 2 years after that, and he had no longer had that problem. So
that's really sorry to cut you off.
No, it's okay. It was just really wonderful to be able to be in that position to be there for him while he worked through his stuff,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
We had to move everybody else away.
Right. Of course. That is in the training specifically. Just generally when people
when somebody gets naked,
really out there, how to manage the group around them.
I just love the idea of what this is all going to become. It's not only going to drastically reshape this, in process of forming psychedelic culture, but we have an opportunity to drastically shift what it means to be a member of an organized religion that has had so much just baggage associated with it.
I want so badly for our grandchildren to really want to talk to us about things, ideas that are outside the box, not maybe stigmatized ideas, and feel like this is something I want to bring to my grandma and my granddad.
Yeah.
Because they'll encourage me to help work this out.
Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. I don't, that's something that I've wanted so bad in my life is to feel like the people that have helped raise me, my parents are really accepting, and open to lots of things. But my grandparents have not been, for the most part, as sweet and loving of people as they are. They've been, kind of paralyzed by their religious beliefs in a lot of ways. And it's made it really hard to talk with them about my own ideas. And yeah, I want the opposite for our generations.
For sure.
Everybody, really.
For sure.
That's what I imagine the world being.
I mean, even think about, like you brought it up earlier in the conversation, if you go to a typical minister, and you tell them whatever your sins, we had confession, we had to go in the box and face to face with a priest and tell them how many times we diddled ourselves that month or whatever, all this stuff. I want to see a world where you come to a minister or a religious leader or a spiritual leader, however you want to term it, and you tell that person whatever it is, and they're just like, okay. You know, I mean, I had,
Yeah. Well,
God,
it's kind of like setting yourself up for coming to confess
for
the
judgment.
things you've done wrong is like going ahead and
When the whole thing,
the
like
framework.
the whole thing with Jesus is that, you know, Jesus didn't recognize sin is what the Bible says, you know, and so like the behavior that is so antithetical to the teachings, I think is something else that it just has to, overall, we need to see an end to that. You know, I'm thinking right now particularly of an individual in our church who, during a mushroom service, you know, told me something. I mean, it was the most personal. I couldn't believe. I was so honored, honestly, that this person would share this information with me that would have been categorically condemned. I mean, it wasn't like a murder or anything like that, but it was kind of a personal issue that they had, behavior that they had engaged in that was, you know, for all intents and purposes, would have been very shameful, would have been condemned, and to be able to look that person in the eyes and say, you don't have anything to be sorry for, and mean it, because this person was a child, was so young, and this weight that they had carried around for probably 20 plus years at that point that they felt like was so bad, and all it was a deep need for affection and connection.
Mm-hmm.
And so to be able to just wipe that away. And, you know, we talked a little bit before this recording about, you know, how, I forgot how you worded it, but basically we were saying something like, how would someone gauge whether or not they could trust a psychedelic minister? And that's a really important thing to bring up, and because there will be so many kinds of people that see this as an easy avenue, and ultimately it should be, and ultimately everyone is personally accountable and responsible for the choices that they make and the communities they engage with. But, you know, what kind of tools can we give to our listeners so that they can have a greater level of awareness that they're actually, you know, putting themselves under the care of someone who is authentic and sincere and compassionate, and not just, you know, trying to rope in more followers?
Yeah, I mean, I would say listen to your intuition, listen to your gut, like your gut feeling,
Mm-hmm.
and try and pay attention to the difference between your head telling you what you should feel versus the actual feeling that you feel about someone, really whoever it is, but particularly when you're putting yourself in a really vulnerable situation with someone that you don't know super well. And like, ask a lot of questions. I mean, that's a big reason why we do this podcast, is to put ourselves out there as authentically as we can and help people get to know us.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes that takes, like, I mean, people come to Psanctuary all the time and they say, like, I've just binged on like 15 of your podcast episodes and that's why I'm here. Like, I was very skeptical, and then I found the podcast and listened to you all, and I just like couldn't say no to myself in this. And like, that's the feeling that I want for everybody when you're working with whoever it is, any kind of professional person, or like getting into any kind of relationship with somebody, like that feeling of, yeah, that's what I want. Just like when you're thinking about it and wanting it and it's undeniable, versus like, this is something I should do. I think I should do this. You know, I don't want that for anybody.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. asking a lot of questions and just being patient and listening to the responses and listening to yourself. How do you feel with the response? Even if you don't know a lot about the particular category of person, like in this instance, we're talking about psychedelic professionals, say, really nothing about psychedelics, but you know a lot about yourself and you know a lot about the relationships you've been in the past and people that you've dealt with.
That's
and
very
so
good point.
even if you, like, as you're finding questions come up and you're asking them and the topic is foreign, you'll still be able to feel from somebody, like, the energy coming through them. Even if you can't logically gauge if, like, the answer is right or wrong, like, it'll feel a certain way.
That's such a good point, because in this work particularly, it's easy for, in an academic, intellectual sense, for someone to pass off, a semblance of deep knowledge. Like, they really know psychedelics because they can tell me all the research, and I don't know anything about psychedelics, and they've clearly done their research. But yeah, what's the feeling? What's the underlying feeling? Because this is energy. It's all of it is, but particularly working with psychedelics, you're going to be exposing yourself to the energetic field of others and opening your field up to others for access. So it's really, really, which is another reason I think that these minister trainings have a lot of value, is because you can practice by yourself in the safety of your own home or with people that you trust. You don't have to go and expose, your deepest self to strangers immediately. You can get a little more comfortable with that, weirdness, that exploration, that unknown, and then start to move more into communities that maybe you're not as familiar with. I wish I would have thought about that years ago. If I would have known the power of my intuition. God,
it's a practice.
Almighty. Oh,
Sure is. Yeah, I love that we're I feel like as a large entity of people being right now, we're moving into this space of, like, extreme sensitivity to bullshit.
I think so.
With all the advertising that we've been bombarded with, it's like we're just desperate for authentic people and experiences. Like, all right, yeah, sure, I've been told that 100 times by somebody who told me they knew what they were talking about and should have known what they were talking about according to everything that was on paper, and yet I still got totally fucked. So I feel like we're like coming into this waking up period around authenticity and, like, feeling.
I think you're right. Well, I think in particular politics is showing that to us. We have been kind of fed this two-party system for so long, and it has got to be coming painfully clear to the majority of the population that neither one of these sides are on our side. Now, there's good people in each, whatever. Every church has good priests. Every political designation has, well-intended public servants. Every police force has good policemen and women on staff. So, you don't want to, I can't overly generalize, but I think we are seeing society-wide that we've been used against ourselves. From advertising, social media, politics, news, education, in so many, religion, in so many spheres, the kind of natural instinct, the natural inclinations of humans towards tribalism, towards connectivity, towards ethical behavior has in ways been weaponized and turned against us. So personally, big part of my ambition with Psanctuary is to put that power back into the hands of the individual. The organization should stand as a protective umbrella. It should stand as a resource for community and individuals. But as far as, an individual's personal belief system and their personal spiritual practice, that is entirely an internal process. So I love so much what we're doing, not just for psychedelics, but for the religious community overall.
Yeah, me too. The number of people on discovery calls that come in, and when it comes time to share, like, what do you hope to gain out of participating with Psanctuary, being a member? It's like 60-70% of the time people say, I have been afraid to explore what my like spirituality, what that means for me, sometimes it's like since they were a child or in the last 10 years or however long it's been, because of being so hurt by religion. And it is such an honor to feel like people feel safe enough to come into this space that us and so many other people have helped us cultivate with Psanctuary, to explore that again and just like start asking questions and like feeling that.
Yeah,
big energy.
For me, what comes up and where I feel like in many ways we stand apart and gratefully so is in our ability as a community to hold space for any conversation. I don't care what it is. I want people to be able to just share where they're at on any given topic. It's just a conversation. That's all it is. Your ideology is not threatened. Your lifestyle is not threatened. Someone is just trying to work through their process. So, and for me particularly, sexuality was such a majorly stigmatized topic that was so important to me on a physical level, but little did I know how important it was to me on a spiritual level. Anyway, so there's just so many things that we can provide for communities that are so different than traditional religions and will help to break down that stigma and stereotype. I mean,
gosh, yeah, that was like having a member on the discovery call today say that she enjoyed pole dancing, and
to be allowed her to be a member of our church.
I'm like, yes, I love that you felt like you could share that here. Like, that is so cool. I would love to have more like conscious sex conversations, because it is kind of why we're all here.
Pretty important.
Hello. So many things I'm looking forward to.
Well, you haven't seen it in the manual that I've been creating, I don't think yet, but in the self-care, in the chapter on self-care, I did actually include a small blurb around, sexuality as a part of self-care. And I think it's just so important that we talk about all aspects of our lives. Even, like this whole, like in America, we've had this thing of don't talk about politics and religion. Like, I just always want to say, fuck that. Fuck you and fuck that. Like, these are two of the most important aspects of our lives. They impact every corner of our existence. And you're supposed to tell me that I'm not supposed to talk about this because someone may have a differing view?
Well, I understand that to a large degree, because it's the way that we talk about things. And that's like,
exactly.
Coming back to...
So don't talk about politics and religion from a judgmental, accusatory, closed-minded mindset. Let's talk about politics and religion, but let's talk about it from a curious, open-minded perspective.
Right. And helping people see that is an option. Because coming from that perspective of like curiosity and compassion towards other people, like I mentioned my grandparents earlier, and I mentioned that I want our grandchildren to be able to come to us. as their grandparents and ask us questions and stuff. And I also want that for us. I want us to feel like as grandparents, and I want that for my grandparents. I would love for them to feel like this expansiveness that comes with letting go of preconceived notions and judgments that aren't really serving us anymore. Like letting go of that, and that experience is so amazing and freeing. And so it's for everybody, and it's going to take us all working together and like breathing through a lot of things and helping to teach each other how to do these things. Because I really do believe that if we knew how to engage peacefully and with curiosity and conversation, we would be doing it. I think it's that most of us just have no idea. We weren't taught. We didn't have an example of that. We had no communication training or example set. And so that's like one of my biggest personal missions with Psanctuary and like our circles online, in person, all the events that we have, is like setting that example and a framework to be able to know how to do that. Because it takes a lot of practice. When we're programmed deeply, our nervous system is just like so tuned to just reacting. It's a muscle that it takes strengthening and practice to learn how to relax our nervous system and just be with feelings that come up. So I have lots of compassion for people that get super triggered about politics,
for sure,
and launch off into like lots of not so kind things.
It makes me wonder if we should have a political discourse workshop.
Yeah, I think that would be really good.
I'd love leading that, I think.
God, I think that's something that probably people would be so like relieved to experience something like that. How do I do this?
Well, and it's an incredible service to offer the community, because then you can then take that and apply that all day, every day.
Yeah.
I think we're doing something that is way bigger than we are able to comprehend.
Definitely.
And we talk about it like we see how big it is, but every time we talk about it in more depth, it's like, oh no, we're just scratching the surface.
Totally.
Yeah. No.
We've already, like the people involved in this, it's like made such a big impact on, I could name like probably 30 people off the top of my head that like I've seen make such positive shifts in themselves and their lives in the past year or two since like stepping into community intentionally with Psanctuary. So yeah, it's really wonderful.
1,000 ministers. We want to ordain 1,000 ministers this year. I want to see 1,000 people in the United States who are expressing and embodying their psychedelic sovereignty, be their own minister. Oh, yeah. I love it.
Sounds awesome.
Sounds really awesome.
Can't wait for more conversations like this.
Well, probably won't have to wait long.
That'll be in a couple days. Thanks for listening, y'all.
Thank you all so much for listening. And if you feel so inclined, come and join us for a Sunday service. It's open to everyone on Zoom. The access is on the homepage of Psanctuary.
Psanctuary.org. It's all there.
Yep.
Sanctuary with a P.
If you want to.
Not P Sanctuary.
It's not the Sanctuary.
It's just Sanctuary, like psilocybin, like psychology, Sanctuary.
Yeah. So weird to me that.
I told you it was going to
You called it. You're right. You're right.
Just Sanctuary.org. It's all there.
Till next time.